Hola, ¿qué tal? ¿Cómo están todos? Buenas tardes en este sábado, último sábado de julio. Esta mesa sobre participación y colectivos que se organiza desde Mextrópoli en colaboración con el British Council. Y es, como ustedes saben, espero que sepan todos y que nos hayan seguido, es parte de Mextrópolis extendido. Mextrópoli, las actividades que ahora tendremos en este segundo año de la pandemia, parte de las actividades en vivo, parte de las actividades de manera híbrida y parte de las actividades como esta de manera virtual. Mextrópolis extendido es sobre todo la parte más fuerte, digamos, más pesada del festival, será durante agosto y septiembre. Ustedes pueden entrar a mextropolis.mx y ver el programa allí. Hoy, como les decía, la mesa sobre participación y colectividad es eso que oyen es mi perra, que son los accidentes que tenemos en Zoom por estar con la casa, transmitiendo desde la casa, y ahora no lo puedo evitar, tendrán que conocer a mi perra así a distancia. Bueno, la actividad que tendremos hoy será en inglés. Tenemos como invitada, nuestra primera invitada, Neba Sere. Neba Sere, bueno, voy a cambiar al inglés, o trataré de cambiar al inglés ahora para las presentaciones. Neba Sere, she's a Senior Project Officer at the Greater London Authority, and is co-founder of Black Females in Architecture. Hello, Neba. How are you? Nice to have you here. Well, I don't see Neba. I see her black screen, but I hope she's listening to us. Luis Galán, he's an architect, urbanist, and designer from Madrid, member of Zulbar Collective. Luiso, ¿cómo estás? Luiso, por ahí debe de estar. Ya apareció. Hola, Luiso.
Hola, ¿cómo estás? Buenas tardes.
Buenas tardes. And David Barragán, he's an architect from Quito and founding member of Borde. Hola, David, ¿cómo estás?
Alejandro, hola, Luis. Hola, Neba.
Y Neba no la veo, no sé si saben si está por allí atrás en el backstage. Antes de que se desconectó, me dicen. Bueno, esperemos, ahí está Neba otra vez, conectada. Esperemos que se encienda su cámara para estar seguros que nos está oyendo. Son de estas, además de los gritos esquizofrénicos de mi perra, son otras de las cosas que hay que aguantar del Zoom, ¿no? Las conexiones en Internet. Nunca sabemos si estamos todos oyéndonos al mismo tiempo o no, pero por otro lado tenemos la posibilidad de tener estas mesas múltiples desde muchos lugares al mismo tiempo. Déjenme le pregunto a Ana, que está en el backstage, si sabe si Neba nos está escuchando. ¿Sí nos oye? Eso es. Ok. Me dice Neba que va a dejar su cámara apagada para tener conexión. But you can hear us, Neba. Okay, perfect. And if you turn your microphone on, we can hear you.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, perfectly.
Great.
Well, so let's begin with this discussion on participation and collectivity, or participation and collectives in architecture. And I think that the question is, what are we talking when we are talking about participation and collectives or collectivity? Because it's not only a question of definitions. It would seem that every one of us knows what participation means and what is participation and what is our collectives. And I want to quote Marcus Miesen from his book, Cross-Benching Toward Participation as a Critical Spatial Practice. He says, the call to participation is the leitmotif of contemporary political and even private thinking. It is everywhere. And this idea that participation, Luiso was telling me before we started with the transmission that he was in some projects in Madrid also, and the debate was also participation everywhere. But maybe participation is older than this hip that we have now, speaking about participation. And the Marcus Miesen book is from 2016. It's 5 years old. But probably it's older than the 1960s idea of participation, that we all know that in the 60s there was a lot of talking about participation. Maybe it's older, and it goes 100 years ago to time around the First World War, where people were speaking also about participation and cooperation, cooperatives and all of that. Or maybe it goes until the Paris Commune 150 years ago, but probably participation and collectives have been not a marginal way of thinking and producing our built environment, but the main form of producing our built environment for centuries or probably millennia. Not only the shelters and dwellings of the people were made for the people, by the people, but also pyramids and cathedrals were built by the participation, if sometimes forced and unpaid, of collectivities. If we look at the long extensive history of our built environment, what is marginal, both in time and in space, is the modern, 500 years old modern idea of the singular individual author, the architect, a sole and unique creator of his designs and buildings. And yes, I said his, because as Denise Scott Brown wrote in 1977, in the preface of the second edition of Learning from Las Vegas, architecture, or some idea of architecture, is pretty much a profession of upper-class males. That's quoting Denise Scott Brown. And probably she will write today, upper-class white males. So the problem of participation, of who takes part in the process of thinking, and building our houses and our cities, is not only for the discipline or for the discipline out. I want to quote here Ivan Illich saying that we live in an age where people had problems and experts had solutions, and scientists are measuring the imponderables such as abilities and needs. An age that Ivan Illich thought that was ending. But participation is also a problem inside the discipline. In her essay, Black Vernacular Architecture as a Cultural Practice, Bell Hooks wrote, "Growing up working class and Black in the South, I do not remember any direct discussion of the architectural realities. If our earliest understanding of architecture was that it exists only in the location of dream and fantasy, of impossibility, it is no wonder that many children of the working class and poor tend not to grow to maturity understanding architecture as a professional and cultural practice central to our imaginative and concrete relationship with space." End of quote. It is not therefore only a problem of who takes part in the process of thinking and building our built environment. We did it with them, but of whom are endowed with the privilege of considering themselves as architects within the discipline. So again, what we understand with participation and collectives. Neba, if you want to start with this discussion as we can, we don't want to lose you in the connection.
Yes, happy to. Thank you for having me. I think we need to think about collectives and participation from our identity and cultural histories first. When growing up, we probably all remember moments where something happened in a collective moment. That might be coming together in a cultural event, or thinking of weddings and things, or moments where people shared things together that wasn't a commercial transaction. And I think these moments are often forgotten in our professional environments, moments where we remember from our identity to connect with connected with a professional environment. And unfortunately, often that is very suppressed in our education. We're not really allowed to bring it to the table, or it's frowned upon, I would say, to bring your cultural identity to your education. And that's when we get, I would say, an architectural product that is quite monotone, or is from a perspective of a majority of society, and usually from a white male gaze, like you said in the beginning, Alejandro. So I think starting from that moment, beginning to understand where everyone is coming from, and what are the tools and methods of sharing and participation that we all know from our histories, and being able to bring that into our professional context would be very, very important. And once we are able to do that, I think that's a level of confidence needs to be coming into your life, your professional life, to be able to do that. And then you will probably start talking to other people who might have done similar things. And I guess in the context of my work, I'm always interested in how to decolonize the architectural education and production, and how these conversations can be separated from the professional context that we all know. And then coming back to indigenous architecture, indigenous methods of knowledge that may not be written down or in our libraries of architecture, I think those conversations become extremely interesting. And then also interpersonal and social relationships, which again, I often feel is very disconnected from our architectural production because it's always quite technical and very specific. But once we bring emotion and social connections and conversations and storytelling into our, I would say, designs and architecture, then again, having that confidence to do that, then the conversations become really interesting. And I think that's one reason why I co-founded Black Females in Architecture, because I was wanting these narratives where Black women are connected in an architecture and design context. And it only starts by talking to each other and connecting those dots that are all somehow in our past, and then also connecting it to the wider context of obviously colonialism, imperialism, and our legacies of that are seen in the built environment. I think I'll stop there for now.
Thank you, Neba. I think that you touch a lot of points that are very important, but I would like to start with Luis. So with these two things that I know you work a lot with in Zuluark that Neba mentioned, education and tools. Participation can't work if we don't understand, if we don't undo the way we are educated to use our tools as architects. How do you do that in Zuluark?
Oops.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, now. Bueno, I don't know, I can see so many similar points of what Neba is saying, but in a completely different environment. But I totally agree, beginning from the school, beginning from when we were learning or becoming architects or designers, at that very moment, we kind of start to think how to open up that black box of learning, of becoming or being something that we don't really agree with totally, no? Because it was not very related to what we wanted to be, no? We, as we can say, we never wanted to participate on that concern of being a super architect or what we were taught to be on the school. So we were trying to open up the box, understanding how that works and try to somehow participate or make an effect on moving some things so that we could be part of that process of learning. It wouldn't be only being a passive actor on that thing. And Zuluark was born on that sense. We were kind of discussing we don't like the way we have to deal with this signature or with this type of projects or with this type of matters. It's just something that is talking about aesthetics from, like Neba was saying, white old men, superstar architects in the school that were telling us what was the good architecture or the bad architecture. So we kind of opened that thing and in a sense, and related to what you were saying, as collectives or something like that, we started this practice of talking to each other and this conversation gets into doing, not only talking but doing, and we kind of participate one of the other, and that's how we become a collective. What are you doing and why are you doing the things that way? I have to do the same thing, but I'm thinking this and then you're thinking that, and that kind of start to mix. Wait, everybody's on?
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm here. Yo aquí. Sigamos. Creo que David está en el backstage.
Okay. So I totally agree. It's participating in something that you don't really like or you don't really agree with. It's very difficult. So or a collectivity that doesn't represent you, that you don't feel that nice to be part of, it's kind of difficult. So we, from the very beginning, we start to design or to understand those collective environments. What are we doing together, no? Like the doing together, and how can we make some environments that facilitate that things to open up so that people can enter, or opinions can be part of the discussion that we are having. No, this was in the school, like old days, no? And we kind of keep on that mind to when we become like professionals, or when we become to do things or projects that it was out of the scale of the school, and try to think of how can we keep on that way of doing, like how can we open up, how can we participate on the questions they're asking, participate on the design of those environments that can include everyone now participating. And right after the school, we kind of start to do things in the public, in the city, in the urban scenario. So in that scenario, everything is collective. You cannot do anything I've never done something as a designer that is just me, or is just through arc. Like we always do the things in a collaborative way. We don't understand the city if it's not a creation of a collective, no? And especially when we're working also in these environments where like there is not like the normal way of doing things. Like there's not an architect and a designer that it's contracted by the council and then the building shows up. It's like many other ways of doing the city, and in most of those ways, like everyone is like invited to. We were invited to by the city to participate in the designing and thinking and how to create those things. And what we found is that there is a lack of scenarios where people is invited to participate. And this is more than like the participation where we are trying to design is like scenarios that are inclusive, so that people can actually be part of the city creation, or something like that. That it was almost the same thing that we were trying to do when we were students, or that when we were in the school and we were beginning to, our city was the university, that's our environment of action, and we were trying to open the process so that people could be part of that. And we kind of like include as much as people that we find out that could be interested in doing that, including the people there was not students, the people that were working on the university, some other teachers. We asked them questions about our schools, and we kind of, I don't know, somehow developed the same strategies and try to implement it in the professional environment now. So as collective, we were born like that. We were like, I don't know, doing things in the city, it's doing it collectively. This is the only way we understand things. And participation is something that is it has already been there. As you were saying, Alejandro, for us, it's like now it's like a very trendy thing. I mean, it was trendy some years ago. I saw a poster in another collective in Portugal. They have a poster at their own office that says like, participation is the new green. But it was in 2016 they were saying that. Like the green is not trendy now. Now it's the participatory thing. So that's very obvious. But the thing is that we are revisiting this thing of participatory design, of participatory architecture that has always been there. For us, it's like something that has always been there. Like the way of creating together and collectively is the things that has evolved. And now it's like a trendy thing. It's like, but we have always had that. But at some point, like the architecture and the design, as you were saying, Alejandro, became more exclusive, and the designers and the great minds appear, and they're like the people that have to think, like, and the technicians also arrive. So you're not a technician, you're not a designer, you're like, and they start to exclude from that environment of creation so many people. And at that point, it's like, I think that's basically gone. I don't know. I don't think there's still people that can think that way of creating or doing or designing, it's going to come back. So I'll say that we're just revisiting the concept to understand what is participation and what is collaboration and what is like collectivities nowadays in this weird world that we're living in.
Thank you, Luiso. Me estoy oyendo doble, no sé con quién. Con David, creo. No, David, of what Luiso just said, and also Neba, she mentioned to decolonize what we know, or the way we act as architects in certain circumstances. I think that one particular thing about the way we have to deal with this in our particular context of Latin America is that also what we have learned, I don't know in your case, but I'm speaking by myself, what I learned in school was the same thing that probably Luiso learned in school in Spain, with no specificity to the local Latin American or Mexican conditions. So we have, when we speak about participation and collectives in our particular context, this process of undoing our education is even, I wouldn't say harder, but has to do with taking into account things that that weren't in our education. How do you deal with that in Borde?
Hi everyone. Of course, I'm agree that when we study architecture, there was a really big Eurocentric point of view in our education, and it's very common in Latin America. However, I don't know, the last 10 years or even a few more years, Latin America is more fashionable. So everyone look at us, and now you can have more information about Latin America in our universities. When I study, I have no information about Latin America. All of our study cases come from to the north, to the global north. So that gave us a big problem when we face the reality, when we face the practice, because first we need to relearn how can we apply all of the concepts, I don't know, all of the information about architecture in our territory. That's why we began to connect with different kind of scenarios. We began to connect with vernacular architecture. We began to connect to different ways to work in our territory, because the university don't give us this kind of tools, give us different tools, but not these tools to face our reality. Maybe that's why we began to work with a lot of participation and different kind of methodologies, because open us the opportunity to answer, to address in a better way to our conditions as an architect, as an Ecuadorians, and as Latin Americans. Participation for us is more kind of understand our DNA of cooperative work, because, for example, in Ecuador, and of course in so many Latin American indigenous work, the cooperation is part of the DNA. We have all of this information in our bodies. So that's why for us, work in a participatory way, in a cooperative way, is so normal. And that's why we can access to the communities to work in this way, because they are used to cooperate. It's not new for a community in the rural areas, for example, or in the outskirts, because the urban world is completely different. It's a kind of polluted with the universal information. However, in the outskirts, you can see all of these traditions completely alive, and that's why it's easy to move with cooperative ways in this area, and that's why maybe we work better in that territories, because we always are trying to answer a question about why we work in the periphery, in the outskirts, and maybe it's because it's easy to move in the cooperative way, and maybe we can have a better share and exchange process with this kind of with this kind of communities. We can generate an easy exchange of ideas, an easy exchange of knowledge. It's completely easy the way that you can connect in that cases. So maybe the university don't give us these tools, but gave us at the end the ability to see the others. Because in the end, if you are talking about cooperation or participation, you are talking about to see the others, to learn about the others. And it's a completely different way to the traditional way, but at the end, it's only to try to understand you as an architect in a very horizontal point of view, in a very horizontal relationships with the others. Maybe the university gave us also this kind of strategy. Sometimes I'm completely against the academy, but at the end I said I'm part of a system, and my Latin American system gave us all of the other tools.
Thank you, David. I think that it's interesting that you spoke about taking into account the others, because one of the common, or probably common, critiques that I've heard or I have read on participation, not only in architecture but also in politics, and it's the danger, as they probably said, of populism. We live in moments where this word populism is used for almost for everything that you don't like. They are populist, and so you don't have to, you have to be afraid of them. But I was also hearing a lecture by Spanish architect Izaskun Chinchilla before this discussion, and she was saying on the subject of participation that when people say that participation doesn't work, probably they are doing the wrong questions. So how do we know how to make the right questions to avoid this ghost of populism when we're talking about participation? Neba. I'm not sure if Neba can hear us or. I think she lost the connection. Luis or David, did you want to answer this? How do you know? How do we know how to make the right questions to these other that they are not trained or they don't have the proper tools
for us?
Yeah. Yes, Luis.
Alejandro, I was going
for us after a lecture. We always have the same question.
Yes, go on, David.
Okay, after a lecture, we always have the same question. How do you involve the people in all of your projects? Because a lot of people, a lot of architects, have many problems with the participation. And we said we don't have any kind of problems with the participation or with the involvement of people, because it's not about me. I'm not doing my work. I'm not doing my projects with the people. I'm working for them. And maybe the participation has a big problem if you see the participation in a top-down strategy, not as a bottom-up strategy. Because, for example, I saw a lot of people that participation is go to any place, study the place, and began to spread some ideas about different projects that the community can work. And I totally understand that you need a lot of effort to solve a project like this with this strategy, because you are moving your own agenda in this kind of with this kind of approach. However, the way that we work is only underpinning social process. Work with the community, work with you, and cooperate and support all of your project. We don't go to any kind of territory and said, you, for example, education is the future of the education is the future, so you need a school, so we're going to build a school. No, a community needs a school because they are working in a really bad facilities, so they need the school. We only are part of this process, support this process. We stay together with the community, build the school, and then we move out. We don't have an agenda with this community. We don't have an agenda with this organization. We only support this process. And architecture has a big power of transformation in that moment when you support the process. And of course, the project continues because it not depends of you, the future of the project, the future of the school, because as an architect, we can solve anything. We can only support this kind of, we can support in the design and the construction and involve as much people as possible to create the best project in that moment, but only working together with the organizations or with the community. This is the way that we work. It is the way that we saw for us as an architect. We can move easy with the communities because we are working in real demands always with ongoing projects.
Thank you, David. Luiso, you wanted to say something.
I was related to what you were asking, Alejandro, about how to make these questions, no, or how to design the questions. And I don't know, we're thinking that we should stop asking questions. Like, the participation is like not about asking for us. It's about listening. It's about like understanding. It's about like how to design. We are now, when everybody said, talk to us about participatory and the process and like participatory designs and participatory things, we said like, design a prototype that can listen. This is what you should do. Instead of asking questions, because if you're designing those questions, what you're really doing is you're designing the answers. You can design the questions so that you get whatever the answer you want, especially from people that is not well informed and that could see your questions in like, why are you asking me this? And I don't really understand. You're gonna make your agenda goes to whatever you want to do. It's like designing the questions is designing the answers. So let's start a conversation without the questions. Like, why don't we just talk about what you think about this, or what you did yesterday and what happened, and tell me about your anecdotes, your life, your like. So what we are thinking now is that how we can design, how we can understand participation as a way of listening to the people, listening to the opinions, listening to the stories, but also listening to the city, listen to the environment, listen to the territories, listen to the ecologies, listen to the birds, listen to the air, listen to everything. And when listening, then maybe you can start a conversation. And also like these prototypes, these objects that can listen, these platforms that are designed to listen to the environments, to listen to the people, can be very useful for the one who is on the other side and can listen to those things. But they become effective. They become like really, they make an impact on their territory when you design something to listen, or something like a prototype to listen, but the one who's listening is the people that inhabit those territories. When you make people listen to other people, so then they're like listening to each other, and then you can make an impact, and then you can start a conversation that is way more interesting and way more effective than a question you can ask as an architect or designer that know what you should ask. So let's stop asking and let's do more listening. And let's see what people want to talk about and what people want to think about. If you listen, maybe you can understand more, like you can get more the things that those questions left apart, which is basically the things that people are difficult to say for the people, are not nice to listen, are not nice to talk about. And those things appear in the conversation, not as questions. And those are the controversies and the difficult things that we should design, that we should avoid, that we should take into account. And those, like listening also, it's something very important, because asking questions many times about like these participatory designs that get these questionnaires that you have to answer it, most of the times are to get statistics. I don't know, is this the right word in English? No, you need a statistic, like so many people that participate and they're like 55% of the people said this thing, so we should go with this thing, no? And that, it's a very big problem, because that left out all the minorities, all the differences, all the controversial things, all the actually interesting stuff that we should be talking about. Because what we are agree on things, okay, if we agree, then why we should be talking about it? We already know, and you already know. You don't have to ask to the people. Like you should know before you go, what are the things that people agree on? That's easy to get, easy to understand. But the things that are not easy to deal with, the problems that are already, the concerns of the territories and the people inhabiting them, that's the thing that we should listen to. And that's the thing we should start talking about with the people in a conversation, never in a questionnaire. Who am I asked to, like, who am I to ask and design questions? Like, why should I be the one asking the questions? Why? To change the roles. There is this nice projects that put the people to ask questions to the technicians. Instead of the technicians asking questions to the citizen, it was the citizen to ask questions to the technicians. And then they find out that they had no clue about the territory they were trying to design or to think, because they were the people that know, or they were the people around them that want to start the conversation without questions that was like that were on the table by the people. No, they were designing their own questions. That would be like a nice and a participatory process that I would love to be in. A participatory process that people design questions is like, okay, maybe I could read some of the statistics about it and like of some of the answers about it, but that's like I don't really get the sense of that territory and of that inhabitants by reading that answers to the questions that you made as a architect or a designer or thinker. So I'd say let's stop questioning.
Thank you, Luis. So Neba, you're back.
Like
Designing the question is designing the answer. Do you agree with Liso?
Yeah, absolutely. It made me reminded me of a workshop I recently done as part of my work with universities, and we did a listening workshop with students after the global Black Lives Matter movement last year, and after 1 year of pandemic. It was very hard for students, and it was interesting. The faculty came to us and said, can you do a workshop with students as how they are feeling? And we said, sure. Did the workshop, listened, and then when we brought back the feedback from the students, the faculty was like, oh, this is really complicated. We didn't know the students had issues with this problem, or it was like, once you actually listen, as you said, some of these things come out, and it's very hard to integrate in a day-to-day or in a kind of system that you're running, like an educational system, for example. But I think those conversations are really important as a starting point. And it's also something that David said before about the fact that we have to have these in our projects integrated, not as an add-on. So, these participatory approaches have to be part of the project like anything else, like the technical bits, like, submitting the floor plans to the council. Those conversations with, the local context and people and everyone implicated should be part of the project. It shouldn't be an extra. And I think the other thing that I'm really curious about is, what does participation mean on a long-term strategic level of a project? So not just as a one-off, and not just 5 workshops, and not just, one, like you say, a questionnaire or a report, Like, what does this look like on the long term on a project for its lifetime, right? How do we keep having these conversations so that people don't feel like, oh, you came to ask us questions and then now you've built something and then you're gone. And I think this is where many people are missing the trick, is about relationships building, right? It's not just about for the good of the project, but it's about building a relationship with a group of people, and you continue having that as part of your, like you build relationships with other people on your project who are might be engineers or, other designers. The people who are using your projects, if it's a building, if it's something else, should be part of the process forever. And I think that's a conversation which, again, isn't often had. And when you think about the top-down approach to participation, that is completely missed. This trick is missed. Participation is consultation, which means speaking to a group of people as a one-off to put it in an exercise and tick the box. So how do we go beyond that process? And how do we as designers feel confident enough to do that, even if that means we open something and we don't know where it goes? And again, for people who are designing something where we need specific types of materials or where we need to know the cost, that's very tricky and scary, I think, at some times. So allowing a level of flexibility to, bring people on board on the project and keep them involved, I think is a level of bravery and going into the unknown that we might not yet have.
Thank you, Neba. And you mentioned, as well as David, top-down versus bottom-up. I remember once here in Mexico, after a lecture by Richard Sennett, asking him the same question about top-down and bottom-up design, and he was a little bit critical of the idea of bottom-up design, arguing that it could be used as an alibi to avoid our responsibility as design experts. How do we deal with that? We have a responsibility because it's supposed that we know some things particularly better than other people. So how do you deal without falling into this patronizing or colonizing strategy of I do know, I'm the author, but without avoiding our responsibility of having an expertise that we can use for other people? Whoever who wants to answer first.
I think the question is wrong.
Yeah, Neba, please.
I think the question is wrong. The question that we are experts in everything is wrong. Like, we are experts in certain things, but if we go to a place and say we know everything about, that's already a wrong approach. And I would say the kind of architect I don't want to be. But yeah, I think it's I hear fear in that question. It's a level of fear of losing control again about something. But I think it's a wrong way of looking at it, because in no scenario you as an architect would design a project on your own. You would always have a team. You would always have, your structural engineer. You always have to speak to the local authority, of a country or of a city. So why not also include another type of stakeholder in that conversation and integrate that in the process without fear of losing control? Because I think that would just make the projects much better and much more thorough. So I'm not very comfortable with that question. is my response.
Yeah, thank you, Neba. Okay. Luiso.
No, I want to talk about what you were saying about I totally agree with Neba. In this participation, like the relationships created are the most powerful thing. Like, this is what we have to design. We have to design environments so that people can come together and do whatever they want to do, organize themselves, create their own structures, their own process, their own collectives, and their own things to do what they want to do in the way they want it to do. And we just have to accompany and design the scenario so that that thing is easier to do, nicer to do, and funnier to do. Like, this is like we talk about Indiana Jones as the superhero that he didn't do anything. There's no superpower. He just do the things funnier, easier, and facilitating for the people that it's a group of people that is doing that. So I think that is the big thing. And about the concept of losing the control, I think that's like really important. We always talk about how to make related to these bottom-up designs and stuff like that. First thing we have to think in this about participation in a long term. Like, it's useless to participate only in one part of the process, no? But if you participate during the long term, this is when there is one thing that enters in the conversation, which is very interesting, that we are now kind of trying to introduce, is that the architect itself, I mean, the architecture itself, like the building, have to be part of that conversation. Like if you keep on talking to the people that is inhabiting, is using, is like making that space a living on that space, then they will say like, I don't like this thing. Like what we design have like something that is wrong, some things that we don't, we were not aware of. Like, so the design have to be not only at the very beginning, but during the living of the buildings, no? They have, the people need to have like a participatory process where they can be part of everything. Like even when the building is done, no? The architecture is already there. So how we design architectures that can evolve with the participatory process? How can we design architecture that can be affected by the participation, the living on the process, the management of the people, of those groups of citizens that create something that they are now making this band and saying like, we are a big band and the space we got is really small. So this is participating in the architecture, and you design this nice space and blah, 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 but now we are a big band, and what can we do? It's like, okay, the building itself, you should design something as an architect, as a technician, as a super hero designer. Okay, design something that can have a conversation with those people that have a small space to have these gatherings. Is the architecture ready to participate in that process? Like, is the design, the architecture we are designing ready to participate in the process that things could be wrong, or things have to be changed, or have to be adapted to another level? And that for me is like the point where we are really doing participatory architecture, that we are really doing a participation way of thinking. Like if you design that participation can change things, you don't have the control of that thing. The building doesn't even have the control. Maybe we have to tear down a wall. So it's like even the walls don't have the control of how the spaces and the living have to be. That's a real participatory process where things could be changed, things could evolve by making the environment easy for the people to participate and say what they want, say what they need, not only in the designing process, but in the living process. And also when the architecture and the building is gone, what do we continue doing? Because if that process happens, that means that what lasted is the relationship between the people involved, and the relationships between the species involved, and the environments, and the territory have something to say. Maybe we are doing something that is like, is not good for the territory. So maybe the territory is like, this building is not nice for me. Like the way you're using it, it's like, I don't know, contaminating the environment or doing something. So can we do something to change that? That's putting the environment also in the conversation and participating in the process that should be participatory architecture, I'll say.
Thank you, Luiso. David, do you want to add something to this idea of control, expertise, and the fear of losing control and not being considered an expert?
Yes, I have one anecdote about losing control that I like a lot, the idea, because this is about participation. In our design build studio in Santiago de Chile, the anthropologist that we were with used to explain to the students participation in a very easy way. She said, if the project doesn't change anything from the first day of participation to the end, maybe you are doing something wrong, very wrong, because participation adds so many insights, so many inputs in the project that your first idea should change a lot in order to adapt to the others. So for us, was very, very good to hear, because it's a very clear way to understand how participation works. If the project changed a lot, it's because you are doing the things well, because you are accepting all of the voices that you have in the project. And about the responsibility, and avoid the responsibility for us, it's not about to see as an expert. And I completely agree with Neba and Luis also. I want to add another concept about avoid, and how the authorities avoid the responsibilities in the territories. We work in rural areas and in the outskirts, in the peripheries. And the debate that we have, especially when we talk with Santiago Cirujeda, is about all of these bottom-up solutions, all of this process, all of these constructions that we are doing in order to support the communities, because they are completely neglected by the authority. And maybe we are facilitating the role of the authorities, and maybe the authorities are avoiding the responsibility. And we always have this debate: are we okay doing this kind of work? It's okay to accept that the government, that the authorities never go there, because it's the responsibility of them in our society. We are working, for example, with community centers or schools or stuff like that. That is not our responsibility, but it's the responsibility of the government. But the government don't want to go there. So we have always this debate with Santiago, if it is our responsibility or not.
Thank you, David. I wanted to go back to what Neba said about this long-term or the strategies of a long-term idea of participation, because I was remembering that when I was talking with Jessica Mezco and Mariana Ordóñez of Comunal, this architectural group in Mexico, that they are working with communities trying to restore or recover some way lost knowledge, common knowledge of how to build in their own communities. And when I asked them, Mariana and Jimena, what was their goal or their long-term objective of this, I remember that Jessica said, at the end, we would like that the figure of the architect will disappear, that they would not need us to build their own environment. So, and I was thinking that in comparison also with, let's put it in parallel with maybe with music. Today, you have any kid anywhere on the world with his computer or her computer can make music, upload it, and become famous, even if it's their 50-minute fame, just for one hit wonder. But they can do it, and we know they can do it, and they can do it great music, and we all love that song that appeared, and we don't know where it came from. But architecture is still dominated by a very rigid, hierarchical, disciplinary way of being produced and consumed. And being myself an editor of a magazine, we are part of the problem also, distributed and make public. How do we deal with that in this idea of a long-term way of conceiving architecture? Is this an idea of changing radically the way we imagine architecture in the last 100 or 500 years?
Maybe I'll start. I really like this question. I think it comes back to flexibility for me. Our world is changing, and why would the role of the architect not change, right? I think I work a lot with young people, with children, and teaching them design skills and building stuff with them. I think that's the beauty of it, sharing your skill set and making people, giving access to this profession in a different way. And if that means open source designs and people doing DIY at home more, I think that's great. It just means that we have to be a bit more clever as to what our role is. And I think personally, I've always seen my role as an architect as a facilitator between lots of different conversations. And doing that well means you have to build your relationships, and you have to be comfortable talking to lots of people, getting lots of different opinions, and trying to use that. And maybe the word using is not the right way, but in this context, I'm going to say it. Using that as a design tool, right? You're just adding that into your pot to make it the most delicious soup. You just add all of these things, and the outcome will always be better. So I think for me that's a positive future, and it's not a scary image. It's actually great, because that means that you can focus on some of the things that you might think you're more interested in, right? Because we wouldn't ever be able to do everything in this profession. We've always chosen a specific path, a specific way of doing things, a specific topic. Then adding more people to your design team and to your skill set or to your dish would just be more exciting to me.
Thank you, Neba. Luiso.
I totally agree with you, Alejandro. We are architecture is really far away from all these new medias and new technologies that facilitate everyone to do whatever they want, and become something or do something that is really useful for the others, and share it and make it something that people want to consume and want to produce. We were discussing the other day, why is this happening? Why there's now the DJs or the dancers or the performers or there are many other things. The designers are very, very young, and that is amazing. The new things that are going on. They have there's some tools that have been opened up so that people can already use them and do whatever they want, and that enrich the environment a lot, because people use them whatever they want. They're not being taught of how to use those tools. So if you open up those things. But in architecture, we have this problem that the tools that we have been using, they're old. When I was on the school, it was no long ago, 15 years ago. We have this. It was changing from drawing to making it digital, doing AutoCAD. But that was 20 years ago, and there was a big discussion about no, the architect should still be with the line and those things. Actually, if that would have happened with the music, there would have been people doing amazing things with these drawings and stuff like that. And what happened in the architectural world is that we have all these digital tools, and they emancipate, they came apart from that line, design, drawing, thinking, and it takes them so long to do it. You have some other disciplines and some other technologies that can emancipate really fast, and by opening up so that the people can be, okay, what if I use this technology to build a house or to do things or to design something? What could happen? And then the design world will have evolved a lot. And that's what happened with the platforms that are making the do-it-yourself things. That now most of the things that I see on the internet that the designers are doing. I follow more whatever designers are taking this technology, learning from these videos and mixing with some other things and doing this positive and prototypes, doing by themselves with other people, with other technologies and mixing things. That is way more interesting than what is being doing with the new technology to design architecture. That's or the design objects or the 3D things that are this is I don't know. Are we still using that technologies? Why are not there's the people doing and for example in design, fashion design, there are people doing fabrics that are sensitive not only to the environment but to your body. Do you have some technology about that is sensitive to what the people are in architecture? Can you imagine an architecture is sensitive to why the design, the fashion design are using those technologies, and why we don't have it in design and architecture? Why are we really how do you say, the harder to evolve, the most like slowly science in doing things with technology. It's like, come on, like, why don't we have architecture that is sensitive, like the clothes? Like, that's something. Like the other day, I was like listening to these guys that are making these fabrics that they grow. It's like a bacteria that grow a fabric, and they put it on your fabric, so it kind of grow around it. And I was like, wow, that's like a self-growing fabric. Like, do we have anything like that in architecture? We're like super far away that an architect that builds themselves, for example, no, for taking an example. So for me, the architect should open up to more the other disciplines, and should, as Neba was saying, like, let's see what happens if you open up to more things, and you just make the people be able to design and create their own architectures. And why only the super technicians have to say? If it rains inside, let's see what happens. Maybe a raining inside architecture is better than the one you are designing as an architect, like super isolated and super well built. Maybe there's something interesting of a raining getting inside the buildings. And also, I would like to say that we have like this project that is called Inteligencias Colectivas, and we started long ago. I think, Alejandro, you know it. And on that project, we kind of like go to places, and they were like, yeah, the architects, the designers are coming now to the communities. We kind of travel all over the world through communities in places that we find out interested that we could work on. And they always say, like, the designers are arriving. And I'm like, no, wait a second. We are here to learn from your designs. So we start to talk about where the people were designing, like those designs are interesting, and we find out amazing things, and we just put them into a level that we can use those designs. And the only thing we did is like connect that design or that designer with another design or another technique. Super informal, super low technology, super easy to access, super easy things to do. Connect them and say, like, in Peru we're doing this thing, in Egypt they're doing these things. Maybe if we can just, like, have you heard about this? That's the people in these environments, in this periphery, in these rural areas, in these communities, like, lost, they have amazing designs. And what you have to do is just like give them the opportunity to design with some other or related to some other designs. And that's what we try to do with this platform. We just like collect the things that are already there. The experts are already there. The designers are already there. What if we connect them and create with them the prototypes? They're going to be the teaching us how to do it. We are going to learn from their technologies, and for them, the technologies they have to inhabit this world are way more immersive, way more amazing, and way more interesting than any of the technologies we could think about to work on a territory.
Thank you, Luisa. David?
I like this idea of emancipation of the society, as Luisa said, and how a society can be empowered to self-construction and do it yourself, any kind of things. However, in societies like ours, I live in a seismic territory. We have hard earthquakes. So what we discover with all of this kind of natural catastrophe is all of this self-construction suffer a lot because they have a lack of engineering knowledge. So if we can create hybrid architecture or hybrid structures where you can create a safe environment with the structure and just fill in the blanks with all of these strategies on self-construction and take advantage of the vernacular knowledge in construction, maybe we can create a good environment to express yourself, to take advantage of all of these strategies. But I really believe that we need this kind of hybrid. It's not so easy, at least when you are talking about buildings, when you're talking about architecture. We have a lot of problems with all of these kind of settlements. Actually, for example, in Latin America, the unplanned and the illegal construction is really high. For example, in Ecuador, in Quito, the capital city, the 60% of the constructions are illegal, with no architects, with no engineers. This is a really big danger in a seismic world, in a seismic territory. That's why when we talk about all of the self-construction in our territory, we are very, very delicate because of the earthquakes. We have a lot of issues with earthquakes. That's why we are promoting always this kind of hybrid structures in order to take advantage of our knowledge as technicians. I don't know, the local knowledge. Maybe we can, if we work together, we can create we can produce very, very good results and taking advantage of all of this agency of that we can access.
Thank you, David. To sum up and to close this great discussion that we have had today, this morning, afternoon, it depends where you are located in the world. I annotated some words that you said during the conversation. I just want you, after I read you the words, to give us, if you want, a very short position, or your position. You already did it, but to summarize of your idea of participation and the collective in architecture. You spoke about learning and listening instead of being this expert that goes and says what to do. Neba said of conceiving us as facilitators, and Luis spoke up of open up the discipline, and he almost quoted a slogan as our work of connecting people. And David, he said about hybrids between what we know how to do, and what the knowledge of the people. How would you describe or define, in a short 1 minute or 2 minutes intervention to close up this discussion, your idea of participation? Whoever who wants to begin, you can think it, Luis.
I can go. I will just repeat myself. I will summarize it as participation is all about listening, and after listening, establishing conversations about what you have listening, which is what the people wants to talk about. And after those conversations, it's very important for me, and it's like the basic of the participation, is to do things together, to actually make the participation not only a process of thinking, but of a process of living, acting, building, and doing things together, like an experience of creating together and doing things together, living together, inhabiting the space in a collective way, and profiting of the possibility of having a lot of people together where you could learn, you could enjoy, and you could amplify the thing that you could do by yourself. So use the participation as a place to listen to the people, to understand what's going on, to have amazing conversations, and to do things with the others so that the spaces, the environments, the cities are more open to what's going on, more actualized, and more connected to what's going on, what is really the answer we have to be thinking on, and the things that we have to be thinking on. Because what's going on, it's going to be related to the people, and it's going to be participatory, because it's the matters that interest the people. And do something about it, like not only talking, but doing. let's do something. That's always what we said. Doing, it's a nicer answer. Like, let's do something together, and then we can think of an answer or of a question to ask.
Thank you, Luiso. David, Neba.
Participation for me is about time, because real participation is a long-term relationship that you establish with someone, with a community, or with any kind of organization. And you need to respect the time of everyone involved there. And it takes time, because you need time to learn. You need time to understand what really is going on. You need time to be friend with.
We lost David, I don't know. Yeah, I think we lost him. Just, well, let's see if he returns. Neba, do you want to sum up?
Yeah, happy to. I think for me, participation is about opening the door and questioning ways of doing things that you've been doing before, and being open enough to doing them differently. And also transparency and honesty with everyone involved at the table. To say, and also a will to want to change things and to want to change your thinking, and also to have, I would say, the agency to do so. Because sometimes in a project context, it's not always in your power to change everything. So a level of transparency and honesty to say, this is the, parameters that we can do things together. To say that we don't have all the answers, but we're going to try to get to them together. And then also involving the next generation in our thinking. I'm always amazed at working with young people and children, and what they come up with, and bringing them to the design table is not such a strange thing to do. Is actually really, really interesting. So yeah, having a future outlook, being open enough and transparent and honest, and going on a path together would be participation for me.
Thanks a lot, Neba. I don't know if David is around there, but anyhow, thanks a lot to the three of you. Neba, we lost him. Well, we lost the connection. No, we didn't lost it. We lost the connection with David. Neba, thank you very much for being with us. Luiso from Zuluarc, Neba from Black Female Architecture. Thank you very much in architecture. There's David. The funniest thing is that you're the closest one to us, and you have the worst connection of all, David. Do you want to add something to what you were saying, David? And I think that I don't know if he can hear us. Well, anyway.
No, that's all. The last thought was about the time that you need to take.
Okay. Well, David from Borde, Luiso, Zuluarc, Neba, Black Females in Architecture. Thanks a lot to the three of you for being here this morning, afternoon, or whatever you are now in whatever you are in the world. Thanks a lot for being here, and we wait you in the next weeks and months. I will change to Spanish for the people that are listening to us. Síganos en las actividades de Mextrópoli Extendido. Ya saben, estamos agosto, septiembre. Todo lo que quieran enterarse sobre Mextrópoli, sobre lo que sigue en mextropoli.mx. Sigan nuestras redes y estaremos con ustedes. Gracias a los tres. Thank you very much and have a nice day.